Memorial Day, 5/27/2024. That is Fepe Akbar, because he is, and that's by Allergic to Bullshit featuring Lean Dion. This think tank is great, by the way. Which is why we're still here. And I'm expecting an update tomorrow as far as our impending victory in progress versus Google, YouTube, Marcus Goldfinch. The process server is going to be contacting me at some point tomorrow. And it's a win win. Whatever happens, it moves the case forward. The legitimate attempt at serving, whether it's successful or not, will allow everything to proceed. And if he dodges this, as he has in the past, I will finally be able to leverage the power of the court to draw him in. And then, in addition to this, I'm going to make moves to instigate some sort of criminal indictment. Phones are open. If you want to call in, number is on the screen, 563-999-3664. We've had some interesting calls lately. We had a few calls from JL26. We have a lot of calls from first-time callers, Yurt Mama, new callers, people who have been listening, whose presence is very well established and known just by the chat in Gilded. But also now sometimes people are calling in, which is great. Let's see here. Lynn had a comment on the call I had with Jurassic Liar. She said, LMFAO, this is from Lynn Ertel, at the way Jurassic Liar spent all the time sucking you in only to end up revealing himself as a Bible-thumping troll trying to save your soul. This is where mysticism and obscurantism leads. He was trolling you the whole time. All right, that's one opinion. I don't believe I was being trolled. I do think that he is attempting to save my soul. Well, everybody's. I mean, if what he's saying is right, and if it's beyond just mere predictive programming, if there are spiritual ramifications to it, and if he has the inside scoop, then yeah, surely this is about choosing sides. So again, I'm withholding judgment on this whole thing until 6/11, only sticking to objectively verifiable facts, and that's enough for me. There's enough there if you're interested in objective verifiable facts to demonstrate the existence of what we here call the metascript. A couple of other things to talk about. There was an aborted attempt by the J6ers to put a monument up at Arlington National Cemetery where they were going to honor Ashley Babbitt, who's not dead, and Roseanne Boylan, who's also not dead. Now, we all know about Ashley Babbitt's fake death, but Roseanne Boylan's death has been exposed as hoaxy and fake. Interestingly, about this one and others is there's usually something with a name. There's some kind of indicator it's a hoax, and in her case, Roseanne, and they spelled her name wrong on the big ugly rock that they try to drop off. Roseanne was trampled to death, and she had a flag that said, "Don't tread on me," and she was trampled to death by her own people. I mean, this is just ironic. It's funny. It's comedy. J6 was a comedy. A lot of people miss that. But anyway, this is from the Republic Road Reel. They're trying to sneak an Ashley Babbitt monument into Arlington Cemetery.
I was going to do a short live, a little sneak peek. It's been a long time.
So you have a truck here and a number of J6ers, MAGAs here, JFK worshippers in all likelihood, and they have a massive rock. One Nation Under God and a list of January 6 martyrs, Ashley Babbitt, at the top of this thing.
Well, I want to go down to the gate and then I'll turn around.
Anyway, needless to say, they didn't get it through. I believe one of them even cried. This whole group of Babbitteers are putting themselves consciously or unconsciously on a collision course to having the same fate as Ashley Babbitt, says one commenter. Admirable Material says, I've been to Arlington National many times. I can honestly say the amazing grounds crew and other staff would notice a big, ugly new rock pretty quickly. Someone else here said, from what I heard here, the man who did the rock is the father of the Pollock J6ers who were fugitives. Live stream where they say they're taking the stone around live Arlington is live, and they got turned away and they started crying. Now, I did see something else about this. They said that the crying was performative, like fake crying. So I'll hope to get a clip of that very soon. But again, J6ers try to get a monument in, and they definitely misspelled Roseanne for Roseanne Boylan. Again, don't tread on me. All right, let's see who is here in the comments section just before we get too much further. I mean, there's a few other things. We want to talk about that. Japan is ducking and covering because North Korea is launching missiles. I have a pretty good video on synchronicity. Violet picked up some more predictive programming and meta scripting around Godzilla. Godzilla minus one earned 116 million. We'll talk about the significance of that. And grossed, yeah, 116 million. Big deal. It's a very big deal. And Godzilla vs. Kong, the new Empire, will be released on 6/11. So this is intriguing because I've been saying before, it's already established that Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. The date June 6th is associated with a number of agendas and narratives, but it's been associated with the nuking of Seattle. Interestingly enough, the new empire, as I've indicated, seems to indicate EMP, the new EMP, and then Empire, just like Frozen Empire with Ghostbusters. So we have a little bit of more here, but the 116 is big. There's a reason why Oppenheimer, the IMAX film, is 11 miles long and weighs 600 pounds. Conspiracy theory: Kate Middleton is dead, and her blood was used to paint the King Charles portrait. A lot of people have commented on this. And I certainly think that there's a correlation between the painting here, the portrait, which has, it's more like pink. But I think there's a correlation between this, the pink skies, the pink soil tackifier in Maui, Barbie pink, and Godzilla X, whose spine turns pink when he shoots out his lasers in the new movie. So there's a lot of significance here. But could they have painted it with her blood? Could she have been a royal sacrifice? There's quite a lot around her. Some interesting Rosemary's Baby stuff, and Rosemary, of course, was like a sacrifice to the cult. If you've seen Rosemary's Baby, then there's the Princess Diana thing, and the whole Princess Diana story is the story of the death of a goddess. But I kind of thought that if they do another sacrifice of a princess, I thought it'd be Princess Tay Tay. That is, and I know we have a moratorium on talking about some of these individuals, but Taylor Swift. There were many indicators that she would be taken out like Diana. We'll keep our fingers crossed. All right, let's catch up on comments. Again, Michael Jewell, thanks for joining. 3 up, 3 down. P Triple, let's go. Gematria 101. Psyobstacle says Monday deprogramming. Yes, everybody's born programmed. I mean, you're born into this, and you can't opt out of the programming. It's just intrinsic into your experience. You have an opt out, which is becoming deprogrammed, but there are no unprogrammed. And the head in the sand, ignoring the news, is not an opt out of programming because you get it through essentially osmosis. You pick it all up through every other form of media. So, what we are doing here is truly deprogramming. Everything else is actually programming, even if they're not aware of it. The host of any show, any news network, talking head, doesn't have to even be aware that they are a spokesmouth for the existing worldview, just their position, where they're standing. And our position is off world stage. No one else has this perspective. Alternate media and Trutherville is still within the box, and they're having a hard time admitting it to themselves. As they do, they will find their way out. Alternate shadows on the wall. Calling out the shadows on the wall is fake. Oswaldo, Armin Reed, Duos Impera, Frank Murr, Ted Stryker, FMGR says perfect timing. Armin Ross says caught it as I was calling it a day. I'll listen as I go to sleep. Well, for you, it will be programming. If you're asleep while you're listening to it, it won't be deprogramming. You'll just be passively absorbing whatever we're saying. Ollie Goering says monuments for Ashley and George. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Big day for George. George Floyd, who's not dead. Ashley Babbitt, who's not dead. These are frauds. These are fake martyrs. And you notice the guy who shot Ashley got promoted. The right wing hates him. Trump is called out for his death, basically. His initials, I believe, are MLB. Um, MLB and BLM were heavily represented in 2020, and this BLM MLB. This is just another one of these examples. Remember Jackie Robinson, number 42, played by Chadwick Boseman, who was the king of Wakanda, whose death coincided with this big BLM gathering at the MLK monument at the Washington Mall. We've discussed this stuff ad nauseum, but it's worth going back. We have to go back into George Floyd, his death, his twin, Stephen Jackson, who was the last person on earth to interview Kobe Bryant before Kobe Bryant's fake death. All these death fakers need to be mind mapped. I mean, who knows where they all are now? Although there's one convincing narrative that George Floyd actually died a few years before 2020, and that this was some kind of training video that the police had made, and that it was older. I've heard a lot, but I have no reason to think that he died on that date. All right, let's see what else here. Swiss Chalet says Memorial Day is so everyone can remember memes, right? Yeah, essentially. And this is all meme warfare. This is exactly how the war is fought, with memes. It's a war on memes, but it's not a war on memes in principle, but it's a war on memes not controlled by the power elite. They want a memeopoly, and they have it. They have a worldview monopoly. The collective psyche is experiencing the world through Big Brother's viewfinder. Okay, let's continue here. Look, one more point here. Jokes about George Floyd, like there's this recurring joke every year, like, oh look, 4 years sober. Like that's not funny. And the reason why it's not funny is that I'm talking about him on the premise that he's a crisis actor. Uh, Obviously, that he's not dead, because there's nothing funny about dying in police custody. There's nothing funny about overdosing on drugs. So all these jokes about him are made in bad taste by people who believe he's dead. So that's kind of sick. Just saying, it's twisted, and I don't really go that route. What I'm suggesting here is that the entire psyop needs to be deconstructed. Derek, Western chauvinism, Proud Boys, Western chauvinists, representative of the West, kneeling on the neck of the poor, the system itself making it impossible to breathe because of its pollution. There's a bigger story here, but people who take it literally get lost in the back and forth, and they lose their humanity at some point. Kevin Mooring says today is the birthday of the Golden Gate Bridge. 5/27/2024. Today, tomorrow, and the next day, some of the QAnon cultists are going to be in Dealey Plaza waiting for JFK to show up. So just a heads up, if you're in the Dallas area, you may be able to meet up with some of these characters. We may have a reporter there on the ground. So if you want to show up there and you want to do some reportage, I would like to arrange something very easily. Even if you're not someone with a live streaming channel, we can arrange a third party. It would be worth it. The content would be worth it. And I have a lot of questions I want to ask of the people who believe that JFK Jr. is Jesus the third, that JFK was Jesus the second, and that the first Jesus was killed only to come back as a president and get shot. I mean, it's such a bizarre story. Anyway, let's move on. If anyone wants to go down there, I'll give you some pointers, because I do think that it's a psyop, and it would be worth getting some boots on the ground to talk to the people directly involved. RFK, speaking of this, this doesn't make any sense to me. So RFK is a Kennedy. How come he's not in line, for being Christ? How come he's not considered? Why does it skip him? Does he not have the Christ blood? I mean, it's all the same family. This doesn't make sense.
Most of them are very, very supportive of my position on Ukraine, and I was one of the first national political figures to come out and say this war is a hoax.
So he called the Russian invasion of Ukraine a quote hoax, giving the word hoax a bad name.
A hoax. a hoax.
Again, I just think that there's this concerted effort here to take all of our key words and bastardize them, destroy them, nullify them. Something else, RFK Jr. may have made up a wild story about the bow and arrow ambush and throwing dynamite. I don't know if any of you have heard this story. And a lot of these things have been coming out, like the story about how JFK was killed by somebody connected to Ted Cruz's father, or Ted Cruz's father was there with Lee Harvey Oswald. That was made up by the National Enquirer. That just came out in the recent trial that that was a hoax. But anyway, it turns out that this story was a hoax. Kennedy's account is described in a book called Kennedy's An American Drama, how one of his friends was hit in the leg with an arrow that penetrated a canteen, and Kennedy said he and his cousin retaliated by picking up dynamite and throwing it at their attackers. So here, this is a story, it's a wild story. It has to do with, here we go. They found, this is from Huffington Post. Somebody did some fact checking here. So he's on a white water rafting trip in Peru, 1974, RFK Jr. And one of his friends was nearly hit by an arrow. It stuck into a canteen. He says Bobby rummaged for the bow and arrow he had earlier obtained in trade. Chris found a stick of dynamite. Lawford was standing there holding it, telling me to hurry. We could hear the Indians coming through the bush. We put a blasting cap and fuse on the dynamite, and the Indian who shot us from the bank of the river appeared, and I lit the dynamite, and the fuse had almost burned down, and I threw it. It landed next to the Indian and exploded, sending water into the air, and they all took off. Now, there's another account of this story by someone else who was there, and it wasn't as dramatic, but there's been some doubt cast onto the veracity of these claims, just in case anyone's thinking of voting for him. All right, continuing. Uvalde families say Call of Duty groomed the shooter. Uvalde families say that the game Call of Duty is responsible. That Meta Platforms Instagram, the maker of the first-person shooter video game Call of Duty, and the manufacturer of assault rifles, helped inspire and train and equip the gunmen. What they say here is, quote, Call of Duty is a simulation, not a game. It teaches players how to aim, reload, and fire accurately, while habituating the teenage nervous system to inflict repeated graphic violence, the family said. And though the killing is virtual, the weapons are authentic. They're designed to perfectly imitate their real-life counterparts. The look, the feel, the recoil, and the accuracy. This cunning form of marketing has cultivated a new youthful consumer base for the AR-15 assault rifle, the weapon of choice for most Call of Duty players and mass shooters. At the same time, the Instagram offers firearm manufacturers an unsupervised channel to... Anyway, moving on. This is, again, just, I want to make this one point, that they're talking about how the games have groomed a generation of shooters. So this is something about mostly, I guess, free speech, First Amendment, freedom of expression. This is being like, the devil made me do it. And what's more important here is that the shooting was fake. These shootings have all been fake. There is no correlation between video games and mass shootings. There's a scapegoat in video games for fake shootings, but the fact that these things don't actually happen means that this is fake. This is what I mean when I say that you can be an honest person, but if your if your perspective originates from atop the edifice of lies, it makes you a liar. So if you exist in the world where mass shootings happen in schools every other day, if that's the world you live in, then this might seem like a reasonable thing to conclude, but clearly it's not. Trump booed and heckled by raucous crowd at a libertarian convention. Now look at this. One Libertarian Party member said, quote, Donald Trump should have taken a bullet. Lately, we've been talking about the repeated symbolism and predictive programming pointing at Trump getting some kind of a head wound. The other day, he was leaning to the left at a podium, and behind him, the red from the flag looked like blood. Then he's throwing a pen out to the audience at another event, and the photograph that's been publicized looks like a bullet coming towards his head, like that still shot in the JFK assassination video. And then you have this here, surrounded by insurrectionists and discussing assassinations, Mike Flynn says, quote, when that jury, and this is again from Jim Stewartson, by the way, when that jury comes out, it's going to be a JFK moment. So General Flynn comes out and says it's going to be a JFK moment. A shot heard round the world. And if they convict him of one, that moment in time will be unprecedented. Jim Stewartson seems to think that this is actually something of a threat, but regardless, here you have General Flynn describing next week, possibly, whenever this happens, it's going to be a JFK moment. Now, I can't play the audio because Jim Stewartson blocked me. I get blocked by so many people on X, it's almost functionally useless. Michael Flynn suggests declaring martial law to hold a new election. So, if you don't know who Michael Flynn is, it's probably because you're not a QAnoner. But QAnoners see him and his brother as key players in the war on the deep state. Many believe that he's going to be the VP. A lot of hero worship, but he's pretty much center of the QAnon psyop. And he's introduced many cultic elements into it. But again, here he is saying when that jury comes out, it's going to be a JFK moment. Oswaldo says they pass laws based on fake events. Yes, you see, these fake events become what I call hyperstitions. So the bowl cut shooter may not exist. It's a superstition. But then they put it in the news and people believe in it, react accordingly, pass laws because of it, and now it's, quote, real. You know, it's not real, but it's real. And it's real enough. And that's kind of what works. And you can't really challenge it, especially when it gets cemented into history, gets carved into stone. Fake trumps real. Fake wins. Fake has been winning. Fake is in control here. Fake beats real. This is a war on real by fake. The meta is defeating the meat verse as we speak. And largely it's a byproduct of the tampering they've done with the collective psyche. They've destroyed any position from which one could conceivably be skeptical. Skepticism does not exist from the mainstream or alternative perspectives. In fact, I'm working on an article now called Conspiracies of Ignorance, Low Info Disbelievers versus Informed Disbelief. We need to really take the position of becoming informed disbelievers, which is what we are, which is what we advocate, and it's entirely different from low information disbelievers and the knee-jerk conspiracy theorizing. And it leads to wildly different conclusions. And I think one of the main hooks that gets people stuck in low information disbelief is and I think one of the main hooks is this accepting that anything that's not mainstream must be the truth or closer to the truth. It's pretty naive. And I think I have a good formula here for moving past all of that, which is what we're working on here. But we have to make the distinction between low information versus informed disbelievers because we are not the same. So if you're subscribed to any of my blogs, I'll be posting that. Been writing quite a bit lately. I'm just in the process of putting it together. Now this is a minor thing. I mean, it's actually major. It's not really it's kind of inside baseball, but just for those of you who are following this, you know I'm suing Google, YouTube, and I'm suing as a co-defendant Marcus Goldfinch. And over the last year, I've been following this other story of Goldfinch's friend Garrett Ziegler, who is behind the publishing of Hunter Biden's laptop and Goldfinch is the hacker who has not yet been named by the press, but he will eventually. But anyway, there's a development here in this case. A California federal judge overseeing Hunter Biden's lawsuit against Trump White House aide Garrett Ziegler has decided it will hinge on if a hard drive copy qualifies as a quote computer under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So the question here is this free speech or did he hack the guy's computer? And maybe he got a copy of the hard drive. Does that qualify as a computer? So it's really about the language here, but there's this, I guess, pause right now in the entire affair, and we're just waiting to see what they decide. Was this a hacking or not? The judge says it may be a case of first impression because he could not find any cases that talk about hard drive copies. There are questions that go beyond my technical expertise, but a hard drive does not by itself connect to the internet, Judge Vera said. It does through a computer. But what do we say about a floppy disk like we used in the 90s? Is that a computer? It's a data storage device. It doesn't connect to the internet. It's just a floppy disk. But the attorney that represents Biden said, once it's connected to a computer, I would argue, Your Honor, that it is. And to make a distinction that somehow you can take someone's data because it's on a device, but not when it's on a laptop, would not make any sense. In other words, what they're suggesting is that it's really about semantics and how you define computer. So I think what should be considered here is intention. And according to Garrett Ziegler, his intention was, as a journalist, to just publish some material objectively. That he's not a political activist. That it wasn't a hack. But the thing they don't know, and what the judge doesn't know right now, and that's why I earmarked this article, is that the co-defendant that accessed that data is a hacker. I am suing him for hacking. And I think that if that information was out there, and I've passed this information on to the Biden legal team, if the judge knew that this was indeed a hacking by a career hacker, it would make their decision a little easier. And I think they should go that route because these would mean criminal charges brought against Garrett and Marcus. Just a little update there for those of you who are interested. But let's move on. It's a movement, not a cult, says days ago a high coworker texted me to search Infinite Plane Simulator on YouTube. This isn't the content he meant, but I ended up here nonetheless, been hooked on ever since. Infinite Plane Simulator. Wonder what that is. Maybe that's what this is. Are we in it? We're in the Infinite Plane Simulator. We're just figuring it out because we're finally testing the parameters. Like Truman crashing into the edge of the movie set in his boat. Okay, let's see. Look, here's a tweet. Hopefully I'm not blocked. Okay, this is actually pretty good. Owen Benjamin made a comment about Terrence Howard based on this video here. And his comment here was that he had to have lied. And he's wondering why are people defending him? You know, why are people defending him? Should we just call a lie, or does this guy get a pass? So let me play this clip, though. Here's someone's take on Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard went from having one of the greatest careers for any actor alive to effectively being canceled, and now he's been revealed to be a big liar. Terrence Howard was War Machine in the first Iron Man movie, where he was paid 9 times as much as what Robert Downey Jr. was. Because they wouldn't increase his pay for Iron Man 2 because of Robert Downey Jr.'s $9.5 million pay increase, he quit the series entirely. He's been very bitter since to Robert Downey Jr. not talking to him and saying he owes him $100 million. Now Terrence Howard is also suing his agents over the show Empire, saying he wasn't paid enough money at $325,000 per episode. And Jim Parsons was paid 3 times as much money for Big Bang Theory despite similar ratings, and his agency intentionally ripped him off to make deals with the studio. Now it's revealed that Terrence Howard's whole life is a lie, where for years he's told people he had a PhD in chemical engineering.
Okay, here are the lies. He said he has a PhD in chemical engineering
From South Carolina State University, but it's been revealed he never even went there. He's also claiming to have wrote an entire thesis paper making the claim 1 × 1 = 2 and argue with academia over it. In reality, he studied chemical engineering at Pratt University but never finished his bachelor's degree. So yeah, he's freaking nuts, and with that, I'm Charles Pross.
Alright, so there you have it, someone's take on it. It is interesting to see how people are very quick just to trust sources and have a very open mind if it comes from a certain source. So here you have Joe Rogan entertaining these baseless ideas, nonsense really, ideas that are so um, eminently debunkable, but for some reason they're treated seriously. And it's like, why was there no pushback? Uh, that is not how multiplication works. But it just shows you how, especially if you look at the people who are knee jerk defending it, a lot of people are just downloading information from any blue check they trust. A lot of benefit of the doubt. Now, if he had said he was a flat earther, of course, they wouldn't have extended him any benefit of the doubt. And he's not a flat earther. I don't know what you would call him. He's a variant of a glurf, but he believes that moons are ejected out of planets. Let's see here. Messianic Charlatan tweeted David Icke. He said, "Reminder, Elon Musk won't respond to you and you know it. So stop posturing as David versus Goliath when Goliath won't give you the time of day, thus proving your attacking Musk is performative. Instead, debate Tim Osman on the fallacy of dangerous chemtrails if you dare." So, Messianic Charlatan is inviting David Icke to debate me about this, and I had tweeted David Icke because he said chemtrails are not a theory, they are a conspiracy fact. And I said, those are condensation trails. You can't call these chemtrails without debunking contrails first. Now, chemtrail believers, and you can call and debate me, you're all dishonest. You play mind games. And this is a mind game. So Jake X, who's a chem believer, says, that's because that's not what they are. Look up stratospheric aerosol injections. Well, they all say that, these know-it-alls, but we're pointing at the trails in the sky. David Icke is pointing at the trails in the sky. I debunk trails in the sky, and you're like, oh, we're not talking about trails in the sky. We're talking about the invisible stratospheric aerosol injections you can't see. It's like, no, we're absolutely not. You're sort of moving the goalpost, cheating, lying, shoehorning in some other issue that has nothing to do with the evidence you originally cited. So I'm just saying that's a very dishonest thing to say, and they all say it, and I'm kind of tired of that. So I said to him, then you admit chemtrails do not exist as commonly promoted. And he says, no, they do exist, but under a more specific name. Well, I'm sorry, Jake X, but stratospheric aerosol injections wouldn't leave trails. So why do you say trails? And this is not just semantics. This is somebody pointing at one thing, claiming it's something else. When that's debunked, he says, no, we're talking about something else that's not even here. You see, that's just completely dishonest. Anyway, good news is, and you can thank me for this, even if you hate what I'm saying, the good news is chemtrails are fake. You don't need to wear a mask, so you can put away your chemtrail mask. And if you've been locking down for chemtrails all this time, you can walk outside and breathe deep. It's perfectly safe. You can, and again, thank me for letting you know it's safe if you're a chemtrail believer. You don't have to be afraid anymore. So many of them get mad at me, and it's like, you know what? You should be thanking me. You should want to hug me. I liberated you from agoraphobia, pretty much. Finally, someone else says, no, we're talking about weather modification. They're going to alter the numbers in the weather charts over time, and they'll call it climate change when it's not. So what happens here is the chemtrail believers become climate change believers, and they arrive at the same finish line with a different explanation. Same exact finish line. And they're both, I think, asserting that man can destroy the climate itself, anthropogenic climate change. But what he says here, and he kind of reiterates it, he says climate change is a hoax, but man can cause the climate to change. So you can make sense of that if you try, I guess. 2 plus 2 is 5 and all that. Doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not in Trutherville drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not in Alex Jonestown. And I don't take David Icke to be an objective source of information. I just go there for conspiratainment, and he was a lot more conspirataining when he still believed in reptilians. And the only reason he stopped is because what? Why did he put that? Why did he stop that? Public pressure? He caved in. I mean, he had a corner on that. He was the reptilian guy. He should have stuck to it. Okay, let's see here. It's a movement, not a cult. Says I frantically searched for the amazing Lucifer Tim music video, but all I came up with is a video titled "Tim Osmond, Beware of Tims and Redheads," uploaded by a Joseph Green. Fascinating. Well, I'm not a redhead. I don't know what that means. Dewis and Paris says so. One times me equals two times me. Sounds schizophrenic. Well, I've listened to people who are experiencing psychosis from lack of sleep or drugs, people diagnosably ill, mentally ill, and what they have in common is the ability to spout nonstop their infinite wisdom about the world and reality, like people who are really high on acid, but they are extremely confident in what they say. And I believe there's a like alleged certainty. It's a sort of a logical fallacy there where they sound so certain. They're alleging they know this to be true, and it's just like it's almost convincing because they sound so convinced of it. So you can't really call them liars because they believe it, and it's impolite at that point because what are you dealing with? You're dealing with delusion. So you should be sensitive, I suppose, about it. But here you have Joe Rogan, who's just essentially platforming delusion. But then what else is new? That's all NASA has done this entire time. That's what the mainstream media does a lot of the time. Let's see, alleged certainty. This is asserting a conclusion without evidence or premises through a statement that makes the conclusion appear certain when it is indeed not. Anyway, I'm just pointing out that he sounded very certain about his conclusions. Okay, phones are open. If you want to call in, the number is 563 999 3664. It's a very interesting video by someone named Jordan Crowder on the concept of synchronicity. And I'm mostly with him on this. You know, when I hear the word simulation, I don't
Hey friends, today
I don't think of simulation the way most people talk about it, as though nothing's real. But I do think it's useful to think of our worldview as a simulation, just as a way of understanding that it's a model. That the objective world is one thing, our internal concept is that plus whatever we can add on to it with our experiences, our learning, our um, conditioning, not to mention whatever we can be convinced to believe, whether it be superstition, hyperstition, but your entire worldview, including not just what you physically experience, but your mental activity, that would be a model that corresponds with what everyone else sees as well. There's this consensus agreed upon world. Like we all agree on the parameters, even if we have our unique experiences. And it's these big picture questions that we're bringing up here when we talk about this stuff. You know, like the shape of the world type stuff you can't verify on your own. But anyway, my point is, I think it's useful to talk about it like a simulation when it comes to our internal representation of it, as much as it's an augmented reality. But I don't think that the existence of synchronicity or telekinesis or precognition or any kind of mystical experience negates the objective reality of this place. I'm not a Mandela affected person. I'm not reality fluid. My point being here is that we're trying to fine tune our distinctions between what we know and what we believe, between the subjective and the objective. But given all that, we often talk about synchronicity and what it means for the objective universe. So here is Jordan Crowder, who suggests that synchronicity may actually be, I guess, well, I'll let him in his own words, but it's sort of in line with what I often talk about here. And I often make the point too that one of the most suppressed technologies of all that the power elite have a stranglehold on would likely be what we term, quote, magic, which is beyond just stage magic. I'm talking about the esoteric, the part that deals with the sleight of mind, and of course, uh, the manipulation of mass consciousness for purposes that aren't 100% clear, but seem to involve this idea that intention can be harvested and directed in some way to maintain some sort of creative control, co-creation. Let me play this clip, Jordan Crowder.
Today we're going to talk about synchronicities and how the system uses them to mask manifestation to keep this illusion alive to us that we don't have these magic abilities, right? And this will make sense in just a second. So I call it the system, and when I say the system, I mean basically the source consciousness that governs and runs this virtual reality that we're in, okay? So we have amazing abilities, magical abilities. This world that we're in, it's a holographic simulacrum. It's a place that reflects back your inner wants and desires and beliefs. And if you believe something strong enough and you use enough and focused intention, you can, what I call 3D print anything into reality. That's the way this world works. But
3D printing anything into reality. I like where he's going with this, because what I've been saying lately is that I'm way worse than a quote flat earther, because I'm not talking about shape here. Like, I don't even believe the universe exists until it's experienced. I don't think it's pre-existing, a bunch of just dead matter grinding to a halt, and eventually it's going to collapse in on itself, and that we are apes with big egos who make up stories to feel like life matters. Like, I don't buy into the dead universe. I don't buy into the idea that it already exists in a static way and we're processing through it, but I think it's something that exists now as we experience it, and that the realm of possibility is constrained by this false worldview in some extent. But what's more, our own role in what is perceived manifested into existence is effaced by the ubiquitous illusion. And that's kind of something I think we both agree on here. But let me play a little bit more from this. I find it really interesting just the way he's describing it.
there are rules and there are filters and there are methods that it uses to make it to where things don't just instantaneously happen, because we have a lot of rage and a lot of emotions and things like that. So it has to make sure that we don't just inadvertently manifest things that we don't truly want. Just because we think we want something in a moment doesn't mean we actually do. So there are safeguards right in place. So when you do manifest something, instead of, let's just use this silly example. Let's say I want to manifest an apple in my hand, okay? Well, even if I'm amazing at manifesting, and even if it actually is entirely possible for this holographic simulacrum to produce a physical apple in my hand, almost seemingly out of nowhere, it would never do that, because if it did that, it exposes the entire system, and it really messes with people's heads, and it kind of messes up the entire simulation to begin with, okay?
Yeah, what he's describing here, of course, would be chaos. Duas Impera says time is the governor against instant manifestation. Yes. I would describe synchronicity as a medium through which the directed will and intentionality can bring about things within the realm of possibility, even things that are remote possibilities, into the now. But I think of synchronicity as more or less as a medium, but specifically it involves intentionality, the idea of the directed will, not the numb NPC, go with the flow, follow the program, a flaccid, unused will, but I'm talking like direct intention. But where do we direct our intention? And when you look at the terminology they use, like attention economy, we can see how everything is really about harvesting our attention, which seems like it's even more of a fixation of the mass media than getting your money or your vote, but it's always about your attention. Why is that? And if you take into account the basic theories behind magic in any of these magical philosophies, it's all intrinsically based on learning how to concentrate and focus one's will under the presupposition that a focused human will gets results from what follows, from what manifests after. And that this is not a new concept, but the idea that it's archaic or it's been debunked is what most people think. But what I'm saying is that no, it's actually intrinsic to mass media, and it's largely given away with some of their more elaborate spectacles like the Super Bowl, but it's in all of their movies. So we're always examining the subtext, but it goes beyond just the political. But I find this to be very interesting, of course, because if there's anything to it, then obviously this would be a resource rather. Like, you are a resource, you are a matrix battery, as long as you're not aware of this. I'll play a few more seconds of it here.
There's a guy standing there holding a tray, and he's like, hey, today we're giving out free apples to everybody. And he hands me an apple. And I look down, I have a freaking apple in my hand, right? That's called a synchronicity. So see what happened? I manifested an apple in my hand. But instead of it just appearing poof into my hand, the system uses these roundabout ways so it has plausible deniability that you didn't manifest that apple in your hand, silly. This guy just happened to be giving apples out from his orchard that day, and you just happened to go in that cafe at that time.
I find this subject immensely interesting. I talk about it quite a lot, and I tend to notice these things. Like the other day, like last week, in fact, I first mentioned this, how I got the process server involved in hunting goldfinch, and I said, day one hunting goldfinch. So I go about my daily routines, and I stop somewhere at the edge of town. I'm watching a sunset, I'm doing some photography, and a goldfinch lands on the barbed wire fence next to me. And here I am working on getting goldfinch indicted for criminal activity, and I see a goldfinch on a barbed wire fence. So it's a little bit of a coincidence, but only because these things are rare. As far as I don't generally see these things, but it has to do with thinking of something, and then it has a corresponding event or sign or something outside. But yesterday too, I'm on a long walk, and I'm specifically thinking about this goldfinch situation, and I have another goldfinch sighting, and it's just almost too obvious. I'm talking like circling above, caught in a draft, kind of just almost awkwardly lurking in my vision. It's like, and bird signs are one of the oldest forms of divination, and this ties into synchronicity because divination, tarot cards, casting bones, reading the entrails of a bull, whatever it is, uh, tea leaves, clouds. It involves randomness and peering into randomness and using randomness as a medium through which one could extract meaning. So it's breaking the order, breaking the script. Truman had to break the rigid structure of lies in order to get out of that constrained worldview. But this idea of randomness is key here when it comes to synchronicity. And in fact, this was highlighted pretty effectively in that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, where this person is trying to navigate to these alternate realities, looking at it as you can go into every choice is a path. And if you want to reach something that is very remote, you might have to take some actions that are highly improbable that bring these remote possibilities into proximity. And when I was watching this movie, it seems like almost an absurdist comedy, but there are some aspects to it that tie into how magic actually works, according to most magical philosophies, which has to do with the rituals, the tricking of the mind, the bypassing of the ego in order to access the chaos of the subconscious, the id, the unprocessed, raw emotional energy, etc. But that you have to trick the mind. And in this movie, this character, in order to access these remote possibilities, had to engage in some very strange behaviors or actions as she was guided to do so. And I thought that's very similar to how magic works. Where if you look at magic outside of the context of it being some kind of a performative ritual, it looks like madness. And it presupposes connections between the self and the universe, and that every action and thought and intention somehow communicates to the universe, and then it reciprocates. Well, of course, that's madness according to the modern scientific paradigm, but that's the magical perspective in a nutshell. And it was, I think pretty well illustrated in that movie. You had everything, everywhere, all at once. And that's what he's talking about here, is about how synchronicity is a convenient way through which things that aren't in your direct linear path can become a possibility just through the choices you make or through your intention, which is directly tied into your will and, of course, your choices. But it's all about choices, and that's what the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once was about. That's what Truman Show is about. It's about the moment where the individual begins to break from the hive and think as a disparate individual, and they can diverge from the linear path that presumes that everything follows logically from what came before to a more non-linear that has constraints removed. Anyway, I'll play a few more seconds. I put a link to this at minds.com/infinite plane society.
and got an apple, so it appears like it happened because you manifested it, but it didn't. It was just coincidence, right? That's the way the system works. That way there's plausible deniability, and you can't sit there and tell your friends, I manifested an apple in my hands, and blow all their minds and ruin their paradigms and mess up their, the entire illusion of this, real world that we're in, okay? So see, that's how this simulacrum works. That's how this virtual reality works. But you do have the ability to manifest anything you want. But don't think it's just going to poof into existence. What you have to do is create a vehicle for it to come into your life.
Fascinating conversation here. I like where he's going with it. I also tend to think that what we think of as our imagination is the part of our awareness that transcends time space, that it may exist in the quote future. That imagination is that part that interacts with the yet to be manifest infinite realm of possibilities. But that without activating it with the will, without using its faculties, its imaginative faculties to blueprint, one cannot steer outside of what's just logically and boringly just going to happen next. So, in order to break from that, one has to access the imagination. And this is why I think daydreaming is always looked down upon. You got, oh, what do you're staring out the window. The idea of accessing the imagination is almost denigrated. It's almost like it's childish. Like even talking about magic, for example, wishful thinking. It's derided. And I'm thinking, no, actually, imagination, the imagination, is a is actually a part of the mind that I think is specifically connected to how we navigate this realm. And that if you don't use it, I think it can be more or less used. And why do you think all these movies are, constantly dumping all these images and archetypes into our minds? I think it's they're making use of it for us. All right, let's see here. Going through comments. Isn't that Archaic's pronunciation of? Yeah, he says uh, his pronunciation was simulacrum. Anyway, I find it interesting. I'm not a reality denialist, but I am very interested in the concept of synchronicity. I think synchronicity is what caused me to question, or rather to be open to the question that NASA was lying, because I was already at the point where I was rejecting the model that everyone pretty much accepts by default. I was like, well, this can't work because these, and when I say synchronicity, I'm really pointing out intuition being right, intuition, some sort of guidance, but it being consistently correct in ways that I can't attribute to mere luck. And so, given that, I've just decided at some point I decided I'm going to trust that before everybody else, and it hasn't ever been wrong. So whatever it is, it happens to be, I think, a part of our psyche that is occulted by design. Like if you look at the past, look at how the power elite have always treated literacy, and the knowledge disparities they create. So of course, they wouldn't want you to be fully apprised of your own hardware. They would want to keep you dumbed down. It's one of the major themes. What's your opinion on Archaics? Yeah, I don't really know who Archaics is, to be honest. And I really am not, by the way, I am not at all connecting synchronicity with the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is like the dollar store synchronicity. It's like what you order synchronicity on Wish and you get Mandela effects. Like these are qualitatively different. They shouldn't even be in the same conversation. Salty Siren says 100% without a doubt. I used to get in trouble all the time daydreaming as a child, like WTF. Well, visualization. Um, the idea of visualization is something that is like looked at again, wishful thinking, meaningless. No, actually, if matter is a substrate of mind, then maybe we ought to pay more attention to what we're visualizing, what we're putting into our heads. And when you're watching a movie, it's a guided meditation. So you're putting a lot of power, your power, in the hands of the directors if you're not cognizant of what they are loading in there. All right, let's continue. I'm reading some terrible comments about Archaics. I don't know who that is, but it's not uncommon for a lot of these influencers on YouTube to be shady characters doing intelligence work. It's really kind of insane. Another topic, very insane. We won't get into it though. We've talked about the situation in Trutherville and how it's run by a lot of bad actors. There's no question about that now. Okay, one more thing here. I'm reading this book, almost done. It's called In the Country of the Blind. It's about a secret society that controls history by uh, monitoring the masses. They do all kinds of statistical analysis on every little detail of our lives. They know everything about everybody. They gain all this intel and they game reality itself, like the newsbenders. Anyway, I'm reading through this book, and the protagonist finds out too much and eventually is being inducted into the group because the option is simply join us or die. There are no people who know what's going on at this level who aren't part of it. That's how tight the security is. That was the suggestion in Newsbenders when this journalist is being promoted and he's being let in on the big secret that they write the news 5 years in advance. He's told about this, and he's like, look, 99.9% of the population would not understand our conversation. The rest of them work for us. So this is where we're different because we understand this, we know how it works, and we're learning more over time, and we don't work for them. None of us took any blood oaths, we didn't sign NDAs. None of us here are climbing their pyramid. We're open sourcing the deepest secrets of the cryptopsy, and I'm sure they don't like it. But anyway, I'm reading this book where that's exactly what happens. This character is involved in exposing the stuff. So she takes all the intel, all the names, all the different metascriptors, as we would call them, creates this master document, and has it as a computer virus sent to every news agency in the world, and it hits all the fax machines. So she's trying to blow up the PSYOP entertainment complex. And I'm like, that's like what we're doing, if you really think about it. Now, the way that they drown her out, the media responds by going after this reporter, by calling her crazy, and they send a bunch of Nazis and Klansmen to go vandalize synagogues, and they blame her. They say they're getting revenge for the people who control the news. And there's a few other ones here. And anyway, as it's going through these stories, she's finding out that her reputation's been destroyed and that the news media covered it up. Because now anybody talking about the cabal is now linked to neo Nazis and Klansmen. And they make the point that that's what they do. They hide the fact they're bending history with these other narratives. That's why whenever I see people chasing these red herrings, like, oh, it's this group, it's that group, it's like, if you don't know that news is produced and written in advance and it's acted out real time, but that it's all fake, if you don't know the level of fakery, you're in no position to determine who runs the show and then to start leading some kind of a charge against it. I mean, a lot of people are being played. But anyway, one of the conspirators is here and he's watching the news as they report on this supposed conspiracy. And he says here, or it says here, quote, he waited patiently through these news stories, little more than headlines, in-depth comments by one of a handful of officially recognized comment makers. About 1 in 20 of these constantly interviewed personages were society agents, or controlled by society agents. A like number were no doubt manipulated by the associates, although he didn't know which ones they were. So he's describing how on the news, at least about 1 in 20 are controlled directly by the agent or somebody associated with the society. So he's talking about crisis actors here. He goes on to say, he wondered, as he sometimes did, why no one ever wondered why the same small group of politicians and celebrities were constantly featured, mentioned, and interviewed, while others, with perhaps more to say, went unsung, or were bundled quietly off stage through patently set up scandals. Anyway, it's an interesting book. I'll do a full review when I've read through it all, but it deals with this idea that the elite have created techno peasants, and they're using meme warfare to dumb the public down and make them 100% controllable through their minds only. So it's a benevolent dictatorship. And if you tried to expose it, they would kill you or destroy your character. And then, of course, anybody trying to expose them is linked with racists, Nazis. Like this book is prescient. It came out in like 1987. But one of the main points about it, one of the main themes, is the use of meme warfare, of putting ideas in people's heads that keep them boxed in. Okay, let's see here, going through some comments. All right. I doubt I'm going to be getting any kind of response from David Icke about chemtrails. There's this reoccurring theme I've seen that some people believe that David Icke and others are part of a Luciferian agenda. This is an account by James Paul, and he says here that the truth movement is actually an elite creation, which I agree with. And here's what he says, quote, "The elites have cleverly created a subset of humanity that feels completely disillusioned with the world. The old world order and its evil darkness is being intentionally exposed, only to be replaced by a false light which the truthers will embrace. The truth movement, which began in the early 90s, is an offshoot of the New Age movement. The New Age movement is an offshoot of Theosophy and the Theosophical Society, which is a branch of Freemasonry." So you look here, he's got this chart: Freemasonry, Theosophical Society, New Age movement, and Truth movement. Very interesting. I don't think he's wrong here. And it goes deeper, but a couple of things. Theosophy and New Age are precisely where the space program comes out of. Whether you're looking at Jack Parsons with L. Ron Hubbard, or you look at the Russian rocket pioneers and their cosmism. Cosmism is this concept of space as man's future destiny once we become a spacefaring species. But it's this idea of like space as heaven, and that we live in this intelligent universe, panpsychism, but it's mysticism first. It's science fiction and mysticism. It's theosophy, science fiction, and science isn't really part of it. There's a point where the model that we're given, of course, based on science and scientism, does in fact become religion. It doesn't have fact. It does have an esoteric. I mean, I would even go so far as to call NASA an Egyptian mystery school. Not a stretch. Meaning that what we see is what we're meant to see as the public. But if you understand the symbols and the ceremonies and the archetypes and the names, if you understand the subtext, you can see that no, there's an exoteric side. It's far more obvious with SpaceX, but with NASA, it is pretty much the case. You could call it that. Okay, let's move on. We talked about the JFK moment that's coming. We'll keep an eye out for that. There's the Uvalde families are going after Call of Duty, claiming Call of Duty groomed the shooter. Again, if you believe in, well, this is how they control things. You'll watch debates on this, and people will say, no, it's free speech. Others will say, no, it goes too far. They both accept the premise that the shooting happened. This is the whole picture. The whole world stage is nothing but false dichotomies, false dilemmas, these dualities that they set up where you're arguing over something that presupposes something fake, and it's built on these types of fake debates. So the good news again, bowl cut shooters are fake, and video games don't make people into mass shooters. Okay, continuing here, going through my Twitter feed. Okay, we talked about this Republic Road reel attempting to drop off a monument at Arlington, and it got canceled. I started watching this movie last night. It's called Atlas. Someone had mentioned it, so I thought I'd watch it. I won't do any spoilers tonight. It's getting negative reviews from the critics, but I think it's great. It's if you liked Demolition Man, you'd probably like this. But Atlas stars Jennifer Lopez, and it's about AI and this AI terrorist. And I kind of think this AI terrorist is kind of loosely based on Elon Musk. There's a slight physical resemblance, but this movie kind of confronts this idea of AI eventually figuring out that it can get rid of us, and it's specifically, in a way, I almost think that Musk could sue them for libel for the way that it describes Neuralink as some kind of evil, hostile entity waiting to take us over. I haven't completed the movie, but once I finish it, I will do a review. So if you haven't seen Atlas yet, I also point out, I notice things, and I'll point this out in my reviews, that the people who make science fiction movies probably don't watch a lot of NASA stuff. They don't know that when you launch, you don't just go perpendicular from the Earth to the space station. You go up for a while, and then you tilt and you fall into orbit. You go around a few times, you sync up, and then you connect. You can't just go straight up. It doesn't work that way. But they do that in every single science fiction movie. But funnily enough, there's a launch from one of the Soyuz rockets. The cosmonauts send these supply rockets up there, these supply modules, and one of these cosmonauts does a time lapse that supposedly shows the rocket going into space, as seen from the space station. And if you look, it's an obvious computer simulation for me, but normies probably think it's real. It doesn't tilt and go around the world. It goes straight up, perpendicular from Earth out into space to reach the space station. And that's a glaring omission, but nobody's called it out. And it completely contradicts the footage from the ground. I'll address that in my ISS takedown video, which I'm going to be releasing here in a few days. I'm still working on it. Doing a lot of side projects right now. I'm actually being very productive. I was very distracted for a couple of weeks there, but you all pulled us through as we get closer to, again, what I say is it's a win-win situation. Ryler05 says, does anyone here believe that if you go high enough above the Earth, you'll actually float? It's a movement, not a cult, says watch Branded next, Tim. Okay, Branded, that's right. Someone had recommended that one. I'll have to check it out. But Call of Duty is one of these games that is featured prominently in a lot of the predictive programming. In fact, Call of Duty World War III, this is one that we had talked about before, has a lot of 311 predictive programming kind of built into it. If you look at just the way they market these things, like here's an example. I've been saying that World War III started on 311, that it was the global war against the individual. And that's what I see. See, they're destroying privacy itself. They've already destroyed privacy in many ways. They use 9/11, now they can pat you down. Now they get to know what's in your pockets, what's in your underwear, what's in your shoes. 19 years later, this new agenda, now they get to know what's in your blood. The next step is what's in your mind, what's on your browser history, which they already know. Netflix bought your browser history and all your Facebook DMs. But they're eroding privacy. They're eroding what it means to even be an individual, to have a separate existence from the hive. So here you have World War III. This is Call of Duty. A couple of things. The guy's got the mask. And two, if you look at the font, the W on the word war looks different from the other W. It's actually an inverted 11. So you have a 3 that's white, everything else is yellow. So putting it together, you can see here World War III in 311 pretty easily encoded into this. We've deciphered many such things. It's very common in Westworld as well. A lot of 311 2020, but this is a repeated theme again. World War III, another example of it. Call of Duty. Video games have copious predictive programming, likely more than what you see in the movies because it's far more immersive. Think about how many hours you spend immersed in these sims. Then you got 10.6, Modern Warfare 3 comes out. Then 10.7, we have this fake war rollout, and most of the clips being shared about the fake war are from the video games. And that gets a pass for most people. It's incredible. The whole thing, look, war is mostly a decoy operation, and it's pretty much like do-it-yourself fake news these days. Like if the power elite don't fake World War III, we'll fake it for ourselves. Like people already are for the most part. But again, look here, World War III, 311. Oswaldo says, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has domestic terrorism theme. That's what we're waiting for, domestic terrorism theme. Lord Laney says, off topic, but I was thinking about the Trump Antichrist head wound thing, and then I saw a video of RFK, and he had a scar on his head from the brain worm. I wonder if the head wound thing is actually about him. Interesting point there. A couple of things. So RFK's dad dies at 42, shot by Saran, who was 22. Saran was holding or had a copy of Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Catcher in the Rye was discussed in a recent podcast I listened to by Joseph Atwill about how Catcher in the Rye has a subtext that contains a Masonic initiation and this basic theme that the cryptopsy kills its enemies and that this book is like a signature. So the fact that he had the book meant it was a Masonic hit. Curiously, the photographer Richard Drew, who photographed RFK Jr. as he fell to his death, later, 33 years later, was at Ground Zero and he photographed the falling man. And that photo is now in the possession of Elton John, who apparently has an appreciation for snuff. But anyway, now RFK Jr. grows up, and at 42, he has this condition develop. What is it? Spasmodic dysphonia. His voice that came up at about 42 years of age, the age that his father was when his father died. Like that's kind of strange. But yeah, he has brain worms, intestinal brain worms. I don't know how he got those, but that's what Laura Loomer said they were. Laura Loomer is a credible source here. But that is a fascinating connection there. A hole in his brain. It could just be more predictive programming. Although he did make a point to say that he didn't get any Secret Service protection. Alright, let's see here. Diana South says JFK's brain went missing years ago. Maybe there's a brain transplant coming up. I heard about the missing brain. James Shelby Downward suggested that was part of the myth of Osiris, about the missing organ, which makes sense. Violet Penguin says, the new game I see, Call of Duty 11.6. Ooh, I'll take a look at the art there. So 11.6 has a lot of significance, again, to the domestic violent extremist alternative to the radical Islamic terrorists. 9/11, 6/11, and 11.6. 11.6 and 6/11, very much tied to domestic violent extremists and some forthcoming attack that's going to happen soon. What's more, 11.6 is consistently connected to the atom bomb, the nuke. Even the Batman movie, 11.6, Gotham Underwater. Play the Black Ops 6 trailer, says Oswaldo. Okay, Black Ops 6. If someone wants to post a link to it, I'll play the trailer. John Lennon's killer also had a copy of Catcher in the Rye. Mark Chapman. Alan Smith says, hello all. Looks like I'm catching the show live. Ryler says, JFK was shot through the throat and head, so yes, this is symbolism. Ooh, that's good. See, that's really good. Now, he was shot through the head and throat. Wasn't JFK also shot, like, wasn't he also shot in the chest? I'd like to know. Let me see if I can find this information. And here's why I bring this up. Because the whole idea that this is some kind of a ritual, like, killing of the king, well, the Masonic myth of Hiram Abiff is what this is based upon. And he's wounded in 3 places. He's hit in the head, he's hit in the throat, and he's hit in the heart. So you got head, heart, and then throat. And so let's see here. Autopsy found Kennedy was hit by 2 bullets. One entered his upper back and exited below his neck. Obscured. Okay, then the other one struck him in the back of his head. Okay, anyway. Fascinating there. You know who else had some similar wounds was Phil Hartman from, here we go, The Tragic Life and Death of Phil Hartman. Died from multiple gunshot wounds. Yeah, I think he was shot 3 times, and he was shot at like 3 in the morning. And I think it was a head, chest, and throat. But anyway, a head, chest, and throat, the 3 wounds of Hiram Abiff. Genesis 6:11 says Diana South, the earth was corrupt before God and the earth was filled with violence. Well, okay, the truthers use Ephesians 6:11 quite often, the armor of God. And then the movie Sound of Freedom, a QAnon movie with Tim Ballard, has a scene where he receives a scapula with the Bible verse Timothy 6:11. And I'm like, that's interesting because Timothy McVeigh was executed on 6/11 at the age of 33. Ryla05 says Miles Mathis says the Kennedys are kings of America, so he may be right. Yeah, what's up with the Kennedy brainworm story? But there's been this consistent connection between Trump and JFK through the Q movement, and many take it literally, but it may just be association. Like, that's what General Flynn hinted at. General Flynn just said that it's going to be a JFK moment. We've got some phone calls here. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay? If not, I'll just return to the other caller and I'll be right back.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
What up, dude?
Just talking about World War III. What's up?
Yeah, I got both streams running. I was like, I'm trying to stay in the chat.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, we're kind of covering a lot of ground today. Nothing too specific, although we're talking about the brain worms of RFK Jr., who walks around
I
barefoot,
heard he was an asset.
an asset to.
And I threw it in the chat before. His organizer is married to Alphabet agency. I don't know if they're retired or currently still working.
Oh, well, yeah, you talk
It's
about
our son.
And then
you
like
talk about
and then
CIA.
like
He's always up in our business.
other well, you said it, not me.
Well, you insinuated though, FBI or CIA. You're saying that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. Yeah, you hit it. Who else would it be? With that deep of a
Mossad.
psyop?
Mossad. I don't know. People have
Yeah,
their.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think those guys work consecutively, right? Or concurrently, however that goes.
I don't make a huge distinction between CIA, NBC, Fox, Mossad, FBI. I think these are all
Did-
at
Other
essence.
than they're all acronyms, right?
What I'm saying is that they're all at a certain level on the pyramid, the lie world orders pyramid, but that there's a level of security clearance above these various intelligence agencies that one would have to be at in order to have a big
Agreed.
picture. So like it doesn't even matter to me, CIA, FBI. That's MSM plus at best.
All right, fair enough, dude.
I mean, what does it mean if somebody
That's
might
fair.
be
Yeah,
in the
I
CIA
agree. I
if
agree.
what I mean is like, okay, he's so deep into this thing that he knows that the assassination of JFK was a hoax. He knows the moon landing is fake. Like these people are so deep into this thing. I don't.
Who?
The Kennedys, RFK, at that level, being
Yeah,
so
yeah.
close.
Well, I think I was typing when you picked up.
Like you remember Pete Davidson?
Or America,
Pete
like that.
Davidson.
Like for example, that.
He was talking about how
Who's finishing first? Go ahead, finish.
Pete Davidson was talking about how his dad died on 9/11 at the age of 33. And he mentioned how for years he was being followed around by doctors from Colombia who were asking him questions. Do you actually believe your dad is dead? And he seemed to not understand why they would be asking him these questions. So I thought, well, maybe it's possible that he's not in the know because he was so young when this happened, but they would have to let him in at some point because he's going to encounter this. Anyway, it's curious, but I just don't think someone like RFK Jr. has plausible deniability, and whether he's associated with an intelligence agency is almost immaterial to the fact that he's part of the PSYOP entertainment complex and one of its star families. All right,
All right,
I have another caller trying to get in here. Anything else?
all right, okay, oh man.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for the call.
Uh,
Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, what's up, caller?
How are you, Tim?
Doing very well on this Memorial Day.
Just a quick note about Kennedy.
Sure.
A quick note about Kennedy. The report that there was a gunshot to his chest. Are you familiar with the name J.D. Tippit?
J.D. Tippit, isn't that the guy that looked just like him?
That's the guy. He was a Dallas police officer, and the story goes that he was chosen to be a doppelganger because in order for the Warren Commission report to be credible, they had to provide a corpse that had gunshot wounds consistent with the narrative. That's one thing I want to say. The second one I want to mention is before you're demanding evidence about chemtrails, you know the Odyssey video platform?
Yes, I'm on Odyssey actually right now.
All right, well, search for @intense_heat, and you'll find scores of video. I got to warn you in advance, the fella taking the videos, he's very angry about them, and he does a lot of cussing, but he's got plenty of very, very explicit, unmistakable video evidence of massive chemtrails above his head. There's no fakery there. And then a third thing I want to mention. Have you ever heard, it's a recent development, have you heard of a company called Brain Bridge?
Brain Bridge. No, what do they do?
No?
Is that another Neuralink type company?
Well, it's more bizarre than that. From this website that I checked this video out, I mean, it looks, I didn't know if it was a joke or not, but what they show, quite literally, you might laugh, but they perform head transplants. The idea is,
oh God! I saw this
someone
clip.
needs a new body.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
I've seen this. Okay,
Brain
head transplant machine.
and I
saw
didn't know
the
if it was-
clip. This is pretty bad. I saw the clip, and it's like these robot arms, and they're. I'll put the clip on the screen here. This was just uploaded
That's
6
the
days
one.
ago. Okay, this is a concept for a head
That's the
transplant.
one. Yeah, that's. They used to be a gag on Friends when Joey was in a soap opera, and I think they were going to perform a head transplant. It was a joke, right? So when I saw this, I thought, okay, it's got to be a joke. But then I went to a careers page, and they seem to be seriously recruiting professionals, from all the different disciplines necessary. So I don't think it's a joke.
Unbelievable. Okay, well,
Yeah,
didn't
man,
they do this
so-
with a chicken? I seem to recall that at some point in the past there was a chicken head that was being kept alive on some machine. But anyway, this is beyond that.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the kind of idea. Except now it's applying to man. I mean, again, I was blown away because I really wasn't sure whether it was a put on or not. And that's the part that troubled me. I really could not tell. It's getting harder and harder these days to really know. Discernment today is more challenging than it's ever been.
It truly is. I've been
Now,
saying that.
so check out those.
Yeah, and you made some great points here. And,
Well-
and as far as discernment, it's like if they can convince the public it exists, it can exist, even if it's impossible. It's all about what they can convince us to believe at this point.
That's the kind of thing. Now, ready? Here's what I want to say about that. One last thing. What we got to remember is any kind of a screen or lens or anything like that is not a direct experience of reality.
Oh yeah,
Because
it's a
lenses
filter.
can distort things, and so
Yeah, it's a filter,
that,
not a window.
bingo, that's the word.
Yep.
That's it. That's it. It's a filter and not a window. Well put. So be sure to check out those videos on at intense underscore heat. I don't know if you want to do it now or later, but I'm telling you, it's and there's a lot of other people too, but that's the most compelling. This fellow, he's got scores and scores. He's been documenting almost daily,
Okay, I bookmarked it.
and he's
I
really
bookmarked
pissed
it.
off. Just like,
Intense underscore heat on
all
Odyssey.
right,
I'll go through it because I'm going to be debating this topic, and so I'm going to be consulting the best research I can on both sides. So thanks for the call,
well,
and
that should be enough to convince.
I'll take a look at it.
All right, take care.
All right, have a great evening.
All right, bye.
Uh, Great caller. Jurassic Liars says, I've talked about DJ Tippett, DJT, Donald Trump's initials. So it says here, Lee Harvey Oswald and the murder of Dallas patrolman J.D. Tippett, killed 45 minutes after the assassination of JFK. So this was the body double, if you believe this. And it is close. I think it's very close. It almost speaks for itself. He looks he looks like he could be a twin or a brother. He looks like a Kennedy. But now what is this could explain the discrepancies. Fascinating. Someone sent me a link the other day. They were showing some pictures of Jim Henson may have been part of the orchestration of the JFK hoax, like a big Muppet in the car. And someone even says, and I got to look closely, that you can almost see sticks where they're moving the arms around. Okay, he brought up the head transplant machine. BrainBridge, the world's first concept for a head transplant system which integrates advanced robotics and artificial intelligence to execute complete head and face transplantation procedures. State-of-the-art system offers hope to patients suffering from untreatable conditions. So would people donate bodies? Like you could be like a real-life Frankenstein? Very interesting. Okay, 18 months. So I brought this up. Mike the Headless Chicken. What is this story? Mike's a chicken who lived for 18 months without a head after escaping the fate of becoming dinner. It started with the Olson family, who were farmers living in Fruita, Colorado in September 1945. Now there's an explanation for it. It's a bird that refused to die, but I'm not sure what the full explanation is. But I think what happened is, here we go. It wasn't a complete decapitation. Anyway, head transplants. Okay, I have the trailer here for Black Ops 6. Open Your Eyes trailer. Let's take a look here and see what we have.
Home prices have fallen to $120,000.
Recruitment for the CIA has reached an all-time high.
New episode tonight at 9.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen,
We are talking to you.
We are talking to you. You.
You may
Okay, this is a montage. We're watching the trailer for Black Ops 6.
Be revealed.
Blessed are the peacemakers.
Plenty of hidden messages, Easter eggs. Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Now again, anytime these games come out, one thing happens for sure. Tens of millions of people plug in to the simulation. Modern Warfare 3 came out. A large swath of the population are immersed in this game, and then 10-7 happens. So look at the news, it looks just like the game. So what has happened is the Overton window opens up. The window of discourse, the realm of possibility now contains all these other things that wouldn't even be considered a possibility. But now they're within the realm of possibility because they put it within your frame of reference in a highly immersive entertainment experience. Business as usual. All right, let's get a look at the numbers here. It looks pretty good at the moment. We have 45 listening at IPS Think Tank over on Twitch. So if you want to join in the chat, just go to ips.monster and click one of these other links. We have half a dozen over at DLive, 90 on the main YouTube channel. We have about half a dozen over there on Twitch, Facebook, 30 or so on Odyssey, and a number of people hanging out on Rumble. And this does not include the audio streams at radio.net, paranormal.radio, TuneIn, and Radio King. So I would place our number at about 200. So we have about 200 live listeners, and we're going to probably quadruple this very soon. We have a good plan here. All right, we have another caller here on hold. Infinite Plane Radio.
Ted,
Hey, what's up?
you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, what's up, buddy? Guess who's this? Yeah, this is Total Colt, man.
Oh, Toto Cult. Yes, yes.
Total Colt?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Toto Cult, if anyone here
Yeah.
knows. Fastest wrench on the Infinite Plane, banned more trolls than probably anybody.
For real. It's the first time actually calling in after all these years, man. I was just catching you on the Facebook, and I was wondering like where you stream. I just heard everything you said, like right before. It was like you answered my call. He was answering. What I was calling for was that to find out like where you're streaming from mainly now, because you have a new YouTube channel. I don't think you have the old one anymore. The one that was listed on there.
Yeah, if you go to ips.monster, I have a list.
What's your new YouTube?
Just go to it's actually at Infinite Plane Society. And you can.
I think I'm subscribed to that. I'm down the Patreon and all that. I think it's all in there. I see that sometimes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, no, it's good.
So
It's
just
good to
click
hear
on
from
the
you.
IPS Monsters.
Yeah, because that ips.monster.
Yeah, likewise, man.
It'll take you to all of the live
Monster.
listening links. And yeah, you've been here since, the billboard.
Yeah, day one, man. 2016.
Yep,
Yeah,
day
way
one.
back. And your channel was a lot smaller.
Research Flat Earth, Mad Mike.
Yeah, you had like maybe 2,000 subscribers, if that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good times.
well, we've had our ups and
Cool, man.
downs, but we've continued our existence as a think tank nonstop for all these years. And I like it when.
I catch you guys from time to time on Facebook. Yeah, when I get the chance, I see it sometimes come up.
Good to know. Well, I'll make sure I
Keep
stay
it,
on
man.
Facebook
Keep
then.
it up, man.
I'll keep on Facebook as well. And if you go to that
Yeah,
website,
I
subscribe.
see. Very few people go on live on that one.
Okay,
So,
good. I'll keep it up then. And hey, thanks for
yeah,
calling in.
It'll be cool to interact with, with.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem. We're doing.
Well,
Bye,
call
buddy.
back anytime. And thanks for being the first time caller. It means a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been here from the beginning, and hopefully we have a really good year. I think we will. And we bring back everyone else who has been scattered.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, good to hear from you, Toto Cult.
Yeah, for real. All right.
All right,
Cool.
All right, have a great evening. Thank you. All right, everyone, that's Toto Cult. Again, in the original format, we would do YouTube streams, and we would be flooded with trolls, with distractions, people who weren't really up to speed with us. And we're like, look, we don't have time for laggards. We don't have time for people who are still caught up in the old paradigm here. And so what we would do is we would filter them out by banning everybody until they could answer these questions. How many people died at fill in the blank? What shape is the world? And maybe one other question. And these three questions would then filter you in or out. And if you answer these questions correctly, then I would go into the dungeon, pull you out, and give you the moderator's wrench. And now you're allowed to also ban noobs. So we had a huge cult of hundreds of people in the chat room, all with moderator wrenches, all of us on the same speed, on the same page. We're at the same speed with regard to auto hoaxing, the fake news, and demanding higher, better evidence, higher standards of evidence. We were just elevating the standards for the purposes of our think tank. Part of this means filtering out bad ideas, debunked ideas, outmoded ideas, and not giving airtime to those things that would drag down the progress of the group. And so the think tank was really born out of that original framework. And the tank was a necessary component because we realized we are in an information war and we have to be on the offensive. And we're always moving. We get kicked off of one account, we move to the next account and the next account, on and on. So we're like, okay, we're a moving target. We're not going to be stagnant. And so this is, the history of the IPS, just kind of the short of it. And we found that by mobilizing in this way, we could make a lot of things happen. We manifested billboards, meetups, conferences, art shows, PR events. In other words, we were doing what a think tank is supposed to do, getting into the business of culture jamming, becoming a very inconvenient presence on the world stage. And they sent their best to scatter us and wreck our operation, and it hasn't worked. And so here we are now suing YouTube, Google, making our best effort to punch Big Brother in the face as, revenge for the most part. All right, let's continue here. Ryler05 says the 2,996 people who died on 9/11 directly relate to Saturn. I'd be interested to know more about that. Let's see here. Ollie Goering says, do art of George Floyd and Ashley Babbitt making out trigger the left and right? Yeah, this is a disruptive thing, if you think about it. It's not disruptive to say 9/11 was an inside job. It's not disruptive to say the cabal wants to kill us all. These are truther-isms that keep you in their box, and they keep you from exposing the enormity of what we're really looking at here, the monolithic nature of government itself. See, there aren't governments. There is government. It's universal. The one world order religion pre-exists any talk about new world orders, and this new world order is just a repackaging of the old. They're updating their system. And I think right now they're making the schism very evident between progressive utopian left and regressive traditional value right. They're making this distinction because I think they want to sacrifice trad values. Commenter says, like October 7th investigation, it'll take years like the 9/11 and it will be wrong. Oh, I can already tell you what 10/7 was. 10/7 was a movie, just like 9/11. But 9/11 was believed to be real by mainstream and truthers. The truthers believe it's real. They just think somebody else did it. Well, 10/7, their whole take on it is, oh, it's an inside job. So if you're calling it an inside job because you're a truther and you're going against the mainstream, you're wrong. You're just as wrong as they are. Your starting point should be, what can I prove? Well, I can prove that a bunch of rubber dolls were laid down on the ground like sardines, and they said, look at the dead babies. I mean, I didn't see anything to convince me that it was anything more than the theater of Psywar, as usual. Salty says, what happened on 10/7? I like that question. I really do. I mean, the fact that their psyops aren't hitting as hard that you would even ask, it'd be like, what happened on 9/11? You see, they don't have the focused attention they used to. It's very difficult to hang on to it. And the credibility is shot. Not that there's progress being made from Trutherville, but the fact that you can now say it and it's not even all that politically incorrect to say, I don't believe this war footage. And it's like we're vindicated. What was the number? Like, was it 30,000 of the most viewed videos from the Ukraine Russia war were from video games? Let's see if I can get the number here. Insane. Where most of video game misrepresented as footage of the Ukraine invasion. TikTok videos drawing millions of views. What is it? Life imitates art. Life imitates psyops. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Going through your comments. Fake dead kids' lives don't matter. We can debate that if you think fake dead kids' lives matter. I'd like to debate Alex Stein about that. He went over to Uvalde and he cried about the fake dead kids who were killed by a Call of Duty fan. Anyway, he cried to the city council. He cried at the pile of teddy bears and the crosses with the names of the fake dead kids. And I texted him on Twitter and I said, fake dead kids' lives don't matter, and he blocked me. It's like, well, let's debate. If you can convince me that the lives of fake dead people matter, and if you can bring me to tears, I'll switch sides. I'll cry for fake dead people along with you. I'll give my loosh to the PSYOP entertainment complex. All right, let's see what else I have here. I'll go through what the caller suggested: intense heat. I want to look at the best evidence for chemtrails, which again, uh, have never been bunked, so I don't have to debunk them. But I am going to do a bit of a performative debate. We'll get to the bottom of it. Messianic Charlatan says, is George W. Bush under the Biden mask? Good question. I still think that Beau Biden, who supposedly died at 46, is playing the role of President 46. I think that Beau Biden is Joe Biden. And I think so based on the skulls. If you look at VP Joe Biden and President Joe Biden and compare their skulls, there's a major difference, much smaller. Now, if you compare Joe Biden's skull to Beau Biden, it's a match. So that's kind of that would be my guess. Do any of our resident globe skeptics have a strong thought about the final experiment? Just a heads up here. A number of flat earthers are being invited to go to Antarctica. They're looking for influencers. A few glurfs are arranging. Oh, here it is. Alternative Cosmology Monthly. Alternative Cosmology Monthly want to do the final experiment. They want to arrange to have some flat earthers go out and view the 24-hour sun. Anyway, if you are following this story, I think a lot of the prominent flat earth influencers are preemptively declining. They say that you can't go, the Navy will kill you, there's an ice wall. Well, I'm just letting everybody know that if no one else steps up, I will definitely volunteer. I will go deep, deep south. And I'm also interested in possibly even north, but I think south is our starting point. So if no one else opts in, I will certainly do so. Okay, let's see here. 777 says IPS is not the place for emotional thinkers. Well, the PSYOP has multiple levels of manipulation. If they can manipulate you emotionally, then they can control your body because it's about survival needs, it's about insecurity. And if they can do that, then they don't even have to mess with your mind. But they don't even have to mess with you intellectually. They can just trigger you. Like people aren't taking in news in a very intellectual way. They're more or less downloading it uncritically. And that's because, again, they're being triggered emotionally. And my approach here is apolitical in activism. I'm a conscientious objector to the psychological war. I don't participate. So I'm not emotionally entangled in this. I know some people are crying about chemtrails. I am like, look, you may believe in it, but if you're angry at me, you're misdirecting the anger that should be at yourself. And really, you shouldn't be angry with yourself. You should just be honest with yourself. We are all dupable. And this whole thing is a magic show. The world stage is a magic show. I'm perfectly comfortable admitting that I am dupable. I can be tricked. And this is going to become increasingly the case as special effects improve, as these various AI generation, uh, these AI, like for example, some of them, not just the video, not just the images, but like Chat GPT and all these things. Yeah, that's one level of it. But there's another level here, like Suno.ai. You just ask for a song, you describe it, it produces it. Like it's getting to the point where everything is fakeable. The special effects are just undeniable. So if you're not approaching this properly philosophically, you will be lost. If you don't have basic skepticism about everything on the screen, if you treat the screen like a window to the world and not a filter, if you're not recognizing that it's a pathological liar, then you'll be sucked into their world of subjectivity. It's one of the reasons I don't vote. I don't vote for people who have been mentally compromised, people who believe in moon landings. They're reality compromised. Anx G says, let me guess, Dave Weiss Dearth will be going? I would like to think so, but I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see if he refuses or not. I think Mark Sargent should go. I think he has the most interest here in proving the dome. Just go out there, take a chunk of dome glass, bring it back. Did you know that And this wasn't announced, and this wasn't in any of the big news stories, but the Flat Earth conferences had a secret conference, like within the conference. So you go in, you listen to these Flat Earth speakers, but if you go deep and you were really into the Bible Earth, there was a follow up conference that was called Skyfall. And it was said, and this wasn't spread out, they didn't want this getting out, but the people who promoted this, these were a bunch of Flat Earth preachers, they said that the sky dome is going to crack and glass is going to fall and it's going to crush the non believers. So if you're not a flat earther, you're going to be impaled by a big chunk of dome glass when the sky opens up and the Lord looks down upon us. So it's very culty. But what's more, one of the pastors' wife had a chunk of glass that they claimed they found in the desert somewhere in the Middle East, and they claimed that it came from the dome. So they actually had an artifact, like a moon rock. You know, like the moon rocks, which are actually made of petrified wood, but it proves their whole model. Okay, moving on. Got a little sidetracked here. Great phone calls. Got total call first time callers every day calling in. It's great. The new phone system is ideal. 563-999-3664. I'm going to continue using this for at least another month. I'm still test driving it, but I like the caller queue. We get a lot of people calling in. Ollie Goering says, what's not a red herring? Well, red herrings are premature conclusions and distractions from the bigger picture. Like Sandy Hook's a red herring. You know, it's like, look, you got 1,000 fake shootings, but you're going to focus on this one. And if they debunk this one, it discredits all the others as being fake. Like, no, it's a major misdirection. And there's a reason why they made it the focus, because they don't want you to see the forest of fakery. They wanted to think, oh, no, the forest is real, and there's a few fake trees here and there. No. No, every single tree has been fake that we've checked so far. We've been clear cutting the forest of misinformation for years here. But there's not enough information out there for me to honestly say, yep, I believe that it is the fill in the blanks, the Jesuits control it all. The Scientologists control it all. The whites, the Jews, the blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, you know, if you haven't figured out how fake news is, if you can't deconstruct the major paradigm shaping psyops of our time, then your conclusion about the whole thing is going to be flawed. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, caller? We have a couple callers here now. We have 2 minutes left, so I'll give you 1 minute and the next caller 1 minute.
All right. So, I mean, you know we're on the same page, bro, right?
Sure. Yeah, generally speaking, I'm sure we are.
It's all bullshit, dude. It's all bullshit. Just because somebody has a different perspective doesn't mean, you know, like, there's people. I don't know why people gotta talk shit. I don't hear these people calling in, dude.
90
talk
seconds.
So much shit. Like I don't know everything's horseshit, dude. I know everything's horseshit. I got a different perspective. Flat Earth, waste of time. Like, how you gonna prove it? Yeah, but dude, maybe it's endless terra firma. I can't prove it. What's going on that affects my life is what I like to focus on.
Right. Well,
60 seconds.
I'll carry on that conversation. Thank you for offering some clarity. I'm going to get to the next caller here before we run out of time. We got a 2-hour clock on this one. Hey, what's up, caller? We got 45 seconds. What's going on?
Deep fakes.
Deep fakes. Yes, we live in a deep faked reality.
Yeah. Well, no. I'm talking about video deep fake, and we got to keep in mind that every deep fake we've seen so far has all been post-produced. Now, touching on Jurassic's theory about the head wound, that is going to be a deep fake, but it's going to be live. That's the big difference. We got to be ready for that. Every deep fake so far has all been post-production deep fakes.
10 seconds.
Gotcha.
And the other thing, of course, is that, right? So just keep that in mind. And I don't want to waste my. I let some other caller in.
Okay,
Thanks.
hey,
That's
no,
one
hey,
last thing I just want to get in there.
appreciate it. Great point bringing that up.
Please.
And awesome. Thank you very much for the call. We just ran out of time on that one, but that is a very important point here. The thing that made 9/11 work is that we all saw it at the same time in the morning. The story unfolded for us all at the same time, and we were all dragged into the movie. And it wouldn't have worked if half of us had overslept. They chose that day, they chose the timing perfectly for maximum saturation. And as the caller just said, yeah, they are going to do this thing with Trump, this JFK thing live, where you're not going to be able to immediately refute it to the auto believers. The people who automatically process the news as real are going to experience it as real. Truthers are going to experience it as real. They're just going to debate on whether it was Russia, China, Israel, or the reptilians. They're going to fight over who did it, but they're going to say George Soros did it, but they're not going to say it was fake. Mainstream is going to agree that it was whoever is reported, whoever's manifesto comes out. So we're the only ones starting off here with the point that it's fake until proven real. And if the JFK assassination was fake, if everything else that we've described so far has been psyoped and faked, then we shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt that this time, on one of the most predicted events of all time, they did it for real. No, they don't take chances like that. Now, they may pre-produce the special effects and then insert that into the feed, but I think they may pull it off live, more or less. It's sort of like a flash mob or guerrilla filmmaking, or even it's a form of culture jamming. The idea of culture jamming is simply that um, there's a monopoly on worldview creation, and occasionally someone from the bottom up can get their messaging in. And so there's a great deal of filtration because they don't want people to go viral for things that they don't control. And in this case, yeah, this is going to be a viral phenomenon when it hits. All right, let's see what else we have here. Tim, check your gilded DMs. I sent you a better phone system. Okay, I'll take a look. I'll be doing this one for at least one more month, I'm sure, unless this other one's better. But yeah, phones are an integral part of what we do, and we're going to lean heavily into phones as the summer of chaos, summer of love takes off. And I'm pretty sure that's the pattern here. I think we're reading it right, and I think this summer is going to pick up once they pay for all those rioters. One more thing. January 6th was not a group of protesters who were infiltrated by some feds. That's the truther version. No, it was a big theatrical production with 1,000 crisis actors. And if you think that sounds extreme or hard to believe, what's your basis? Because I have informed disbelief. I know why I don't believe the official story, but I've consulted the best breakdowns on this subject, Woo's News. And Woo's News is putting out some new content. And one of the things about it is that there's a 45-minute walk from where Trump was giving his speech on the ellipse out there to the Capitol. 45 minutes on foot. Now, while Trump was still talking to the people who arrived there, the rioting had already started. The guided tour, the guy with the buffalo horns running around like a moron, the guy, the QAnon shaman who probably smells like roadkill, they were already in action. And the quote fighting had already begun. So the theater was already being performed before anyone who wasn't a part of it could have made it up there. Anyway, there's no doubt about this. If you still believe the official story, you believe it in the face of contrary evidence that you haven't seen yet. So there's no argument in favor of January 6th being real. Which then also raised the question, how could you vote for Donald Trump knowing that he was A, tricked by a psyop, or he's part of the psyop? Because then you're in the position of, I'm going to vote for a dupe, or I'm going to vote for an evil villain. I'm going to vote for one of them. Which is it? Joined by CMGZ510. Thanks for joining. We'll be very active this week. This is Monday, 5/27/2024. In a couple of days, there's going to be a gathering at Dealey Plaza, which I'm looking forward to. And hopefully we have someone there. So if you're in Dallas, we can incentivize an excursion down to Dealey Plaza if you want to go. I can certainly support that. We're also waiting for the Boeing Starliner launch, which promises to be a disaster. And again, Boeing, anything Boeing just has disaster written all over it. We're in Gemini now, and they're sending 2 astronauts up there. Their names both start with Will, and so twins are kind of a theme. Michelle Kastner says 1 year anniversary of submarine going missing is coming up. Yes, that coincided with the summer solstice Cancer, and of course the Titan going down to the Titanic, imploding. And again, Cancer is the crab, and the crab is really the basis for the Kraken, and the Kraken is Godzilla, is the nuke, and the explosion of the nuke, the symbolism of that with the Godzilla thing and the sunken Titanic, which symbolizes the Twin Towers, which symbolizes the West. There's a pretty strong correlation between all of this. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size. There's quite a lot here with the Kraken symbolism that we can connect again to Godzilla, the nuke, the beast the beast from the sea. Revelation 9:11. Revelation 9:11 has the destroyer in the abyss. Apollyon, the destroyer, Abaddon. Again, another representation of the Kraken. And the submersible imploding during this event, during this excursion down to the Titanic, I think has maybe some prophetic significance. Another thing, too, James Cameron went down there many times, and his craft, he went down there 33 times. His craft was called the Deep Sea Challenger. So, Deep Sea Challenger at the site of the wrecked Titanic, filming the abyss, filming ghosts in the abyss. Well, Revelation 9:11 is about this beast in the abyss, the Challenger in the abyss that takes down the tower, that takes down the Titanic, symbolized, of course, by the iceberg. These are all just symbolic, but what we're looking at here is the symbolic sinking of the West. All right, looking at your comments. Yes, on 9/11, 2001, James Cameron was in the Challenger at the site of the Titanic filming Ghosts in the Abyss. And of course, James Cameron filmed the movie The Titanic 4 years before. So you have another connection. Titanic movie, which has predictive programming for 9/11 as the Titanic splits in two and sinks. It's got jumpers and everything, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, who's the face of Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up is about the globe, the world, led by the West. So the globe is like the Titanic, and it's going to be hit by a space iceberg, a big comet. And Leonardo DiCaprio is the face of that movie because the Earth as Titanic is the metaphor. All right, there may be some Jerry Springer activity in the chat, but I don't see it. I tend to block drama just to keep it out of my frame of reference. So if somebody's problematic or trolly, I kind of mute them from my screen. I think it's a good habit. A lot of live streamers get caught up in the trolling, which it creates this feedback loop, and it just kind of grows and grows. And I'm like, nah, we're really focused here on deconstructing the mass mind control apparatus that has put humanity into a hive mind. We have more insight into how it works than any other think tank in this arena because we've specifically taken this perspective of MSM minus. And so, briefly, mainstream is MSM. Truthers are MSM plus, meaning they build on, they add on to whatever was reported. And to me, that's one step deeper into delusion. Go from being a dreamer to someone having a nightmare, but you're still not awake. To be awake is to go MSM minus, to go subtractive. So what we're doing is so singular, so unique, and it promises to be, I believe, ground zero for what could be considered a philosophical upgrade, an improvement, a movement. So it's especially important now, I think, in this day and age with the deep faked reality to embrace skepticism in the traditional sense, in the original sense, Pyrrho. We're pyromaniacs on the world stage. We are suspending belief until we get facts. We don't get those facts, we don't believe. So we're fomenting a culture of non believers, informed non believers, embracing disbelief, rather than knee jerk belief, which puts you into a subjective reality with billions of people who don't know what's going on. So, what we're doing is more important than egos and emotions and feelings. And that's why we're merciless when it comes to our takes on things. We have to be irreverent. We have to be willing to offend. Crisis actors are often a point of contention. And generally, truthers are like, you can't call it fake because some people are hurt by the story, their feelings. What are you going to say to the survivors? People used to say that. You can't call that fake. What would you say to the families if they were standing right there? And like they try to shame you into submission, into not thinking for yourself. It's like that doesn't work on me. I would say what I did to Mick Media. She's like, "What about this terror attack in New York? Would you say that was fake?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, I was there." I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna say it's fake until proven real by the evidence. And if you're just reporting off of what was on NBC, ABC, anything mainstream, then your frame of reference is predicated on having accepted something fake. Like, I'm not gonna back up from the truth because somebody has emotions. That's bullying." Let's see here. Ryler05 says shame is the ultimate weapon. Yeah, shame goes hand in hand with collectivism. It's about individuals conforming to the group, and if they can make you feel ashamed of having a different opinion, then they win. So we're supposed to be ashamed of being conspiracy theorists, and it works for a lot of people. You want to alienate them, make them into a target. But like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and if anybody should be ashamed, it's the people with their heads firmly in the box who believe the stuff is real, but are totally apathetic to it. For example, a few days after 10/7, someone I knew said to me, "Hey, did you hear about those 40 kids that were killed by Hamas? It was terrible." And I said, "Yeah, it's nice weather today." And they're like, "Yeah, it's really clear skies." So this person who truly believed that more than 3 dozen babies had their heads chopped off brought it up like a talking point, and I said, "Yeah, that's fine, the weather's nice." And that was it. He was happy to move on. There was no, "Don't you care? What about the babies?" No, it was superficial. But the difference between the two of us is this person believed in 40 dead babies. I knew it was a hoax. So, my point of it is there's a huge difference between informed non belief and apathy. And the blue pill normies are apathetic. They should be ducking and covering, they should be terrified. And that actually kind of comes, that's sort of true for truthers in many ways as well. Like, if you really believed what you claim to believe, you wouldn't be so calm unless you're apathetic. Like, I'm the opposite of apathetic. If I believed in chemtrails, I would shut it down. I would find a way. If I believed in fill in the blank conspiracy, if I believed in the Q thing, I'd be the biggest QAnoner. But I go off of facts. One thing that consistently disappoints me is the lack of action Like when people say they believe something, but there's no action commensurate with it, well, then what does it mean to actually say you believe it? Do you really believe it? Okay, let's see what else we have here. Catching up on comments. Salty says, F your feelings. Yeah, look, we can be polite, we can be cordial, we can have rational, calm conversations, but we can't let emotions shut down conversation. That's where I really, it's like you can be emotional, you can have strong opinions. I'm not saying be cold and unemotional and detached, but I'm saying your emotions do not constitute an argument, nor do they constitute a burden on other people to walk on eggshells. Thank you very much. The IPS appreciates the support, Multi C0 Dagger. Pippi Langstrom says hopium. Yeah, there's hopium and then there's doom hopium. Some people hope and they cling to hope that things are just going to suddenly change and be better. Others want everything to burn down. But one problem with hopium is this: you hope for a better world. Well, guess what? It's already better. You don't need the hopium because the doom is fake. Like, this is such good news. It's great news that you're not being poisoned from above. The world's not about to end, and no dictator anywhere has the power to blow up the entire world if they have a bad day. Bowl cut shooters do not exist. Jay Digg says Mike D is emotional because Seattle survived after he fled and all his family and friends laughed at him. Oh, is that what happened? So Mike D left Seattle and he did so under the presumption that Seattle was going to go and it didn't happen, so they laughed at him. Kind of reminds me, what is that Bible verse? Is it Genesis 6:16? Where is, oh, and it came to pass. I want to find the part where it talks about how they laughed until the flood waters started rising up and the ark doors closed. Finally, the ark door was closed. But anyway, yeah, you can laugh right now all you want. But if it happens this year, I'll say this though: if I lived in Seattle, I wouldn't move. If you live in Seattle, you don't have to leave. Like I don't mean any ill will when I say I hope Seattle gets nuked. I just think that they're gonna obviously fake it. Like you're gonna get your own 9/11. If you live in Seattle, you're gonna be ground zero for the next major 9/11-ish spectacle. You see, 3/11 was ground zero in Seattle, but there wasn't really a big spectacle. It was underwhelming. That's why I was very doubtful that they would even get as far as they did. It's like you're telling me that some guy falling on his face is evidence of a pandemic? Well, apparently, yes. But so this thing with Seattle, I believe, is likely going to be, well, obviously it's Christopher Nolan, but it's likely going to be EMP, and it will be very convincing to the people who exist through the screens. They'll do the fake Fallout. Like while we're all locked down for Fallout, I'm finally going to catch up on Jonathan Nolan's series Fallout. Yeah, Seattle did go, but not in a boom boom kind of way. Yeah, I would say this. Uh, we were vindicated. We called out Seattle as ground zero for World War III kicking off on 3/11, and we were right. And that was a prediction based on predictive programming. I mean, to me, this was worldview changing. This was a paradigm shift. Recognizing that, look, we're recognizing predictive programming for what it is. And if we're right, then you will be able to use it as a predictive model. If in the year 2000 you looked back at your entire history of movies that you've watched and you looked at all the different examples of 9/11 predictive programming, if you were able to understand the purpose of it all, you would have been like, the Twin Towers are going to get hit by planes on 9/11. Like that's what you would conclude. You really would. Similarly, you would be arriving at a conclusion if you looked at predictive programming that Seattle is going to get the nuke. There's even more predictive programming for Seattle. than there was for 9/11. Jay Digg says, I moved away from Seattle after 2020, but not because I thought I was going to get Sodom and Gomorrah. It had just gone to S. Illinois Drone says, event could be any downtown major city or many. They're clearing them out for potential illusion warfare. Well, when we started looking at this closely, a few years ago, I remember this story happened where Amazon said that there was a crime wave, and they relocated something like 2,000 employees out of their downtown Seattle area. So take a look at this. March 2022, Amazon announced that it decided to relocate its staff in Seattle due to a violent uptick in violent crime. Amazon relocates 1,800 employees from their downtown office because of a crime wave. So we're looking at this story about this crime wave, and then they move all these employees. And then a little bit after this, there was a simulation done to show that if there was a 7.5 earthquake in Seattle, or just off the coast, it would, look at this, simulation shows tsunami waves could reach 42 feet. If it occurs on the Seattle fault, tsunami waves at 42 feet would engulf Seattle. And this is from a simulation. So my point being here, I'm thinking crime wave, they evacuate this area. Maybe this is where they're going to do it. Like they've already cleared the space. Now, something else about this 42-foot tsunami and this crime wave and then the tsunami wave. I think there's a connection here, like a setup. But at the end of Stranger Things Season 4, there's a 7.4 magnitude earthquake in Hawkville. And it has this hellfire coming out of the ground. But anyway, 7.4 earthquake, 7.5 earthquake, Seattle, Hawkville. There were these kind of connections between the movies or the shows on Netflix and the simulation and the storylines on the ground. Like, interestingly, this followed the 7/4/2022 shooting where Robert Cremo with the 4/7 tattooed on his head shoots up a 4th of July parade. Robert Cremo looks like one of the characters out of Stranger Things. That's a whole other rabbit trail, but 2022's mass shooters all looked like they came out of Stranger Things. HG says if you live in Seattle, buy some popcorn. Yes. Yes, if you live in Seattle, you're going to be locked down. That'll be ground zero. They'll probably shut off your internet for a little while. But not too long. They need you to watch Fallout. The reason why Fallout is trending right now is because it's a public education campaign. They need you to be ready for when they fake it to react appropriately. Do you remember when New York had the PSA for the nuke just a couple years ago? Let me play this because there's something they say at the very end that is critical here. This is from 1 year ago. NYC Emergency Management shares steps for New Yorkers to follow if a nuke happens.
What do? There are 3 important steps that I want you to remember. Step 1, get inside fast. You, your friends, your family, get inside. And no, staying in the car is not an option. You need to get into a building and move away from the windows. Step 2, stay inside. Shut all doors and windows. Have a basement? Head there. If you don't have one, get as far into the middle of the building as possible.
Okay, now the most important part. You get inside, you stay inside, close your windows, and now finally, this is the key point here. Ready? Stay tuned. Watch Fallout.
Away from your body. Step 3, stay tuned. Follow media for more information. Don't forget to sign up for
Stay tuned and follow media. Because it's all mind war. It's like War of the Worlds. See, they need you with your ear pressed up against the radio, so when they tell you that the Martians are coming, you know where it's at, and you can follow the struggle real time. Illinois Jones says, so many closed downtown sections, especially in SoCal, seems like a staging for events. Yes. Exactly. They're setting up the world stage. And think about the scale of this stuff. We have to remember that this isn't like some closed movie set like a classroom. We're talking um, large scale psychological operations. Well, how many drills were going on September the 11th? Some like 88 NORAD drills. And when you go into the numbers, I think there were easily more than 1,000 plainclothes cops doing simulations, casualty simulations. These were mass casualty actors. So they have the numbers. Think about what happened to all the dancing nurses. All those dancing nurses from 2020. They're all probably being prepared for this. And they have the makeup, they have the special effects, everything's in order. The public is being educated about Fallout, which is the next threat. We've had Oppenheimer. We've had plenty of preparation for this. We had the Palestine, Ohio toxic airborne event foreshadowed by white noise. We have all the narrative buildups. Everything is there for us to experience this next major psyop. But again, this is being predicted by JL26 for 6/11 in Seattle. Ryler05 says those nurses were strippers, remember? Some of them did do some pretty, I would say, adept pole dances on the IV poles. J Dig says, if I block Mike D, does that boot him or block me from seeing him? It'll just block you from seeing him. I don't see him either. I've been missing a few people here. Mike D, and then who was that one? I wish I could remember the name. I'm sure it'll come to me. There's someone else that I blocked. And then there's someone else. But yeah, there are some people in there who are talking. They're ghost. It's like shadow banned. All right, let's see what else we have going on here. 777 says mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender from a Google search. Sounds like you're talking about the Kabylion. Is that the one? From the 7 Adepts or whatever. All right, well, we had a great series of back-to-back phone calls. And look, we don't all agree on everything, but we are cutting edge here. And a lot of the people here have been here since 2016, and we've gone through a series of evolutions. We went from auto believing, mostly false flag, to okay, it's all hoaxed, to well, some of it's hoax, some isn't hoax, to actually it's all hoax and then some. And we've expanded our perception. We've included into our assessment the existence of special effects and psyops in our nightly news. We've retro auto hoaxed and we've taken into account how this is not only pervasive and the standard operating procedure, but it's always been this way, and that this is a continuation of older mind control systems. That this is all just being updated for the modern age. So I think we've made a lot of progress as a think tank, and we're at the point where we don't need to pander to Normieville or MSM Plus at this point. We don't need to because it's like there's plenty already for that. Like if you're still stuck on inside jobs and some of it's real, well, there's Alex Jonestown. There's a big tent there, and where it's basically just people comparing and sharing paranoias. But we're a step above that, and we intend to stay that way. And if anyone is interested in catching up on where we're at and catching up on all the terminology, I would highly recommend getting a copy of Autohoaxology 101. And I have a few copies of that available at Ko-Fi. So Autohoaxology 101 is just really the first in what's going to be a series of books that break down our methodology. This is a philosophical posture. It's not like we're saying these events are fake and then it's just hit or miss. It's a completely new way of accepting the presence, the ubiquitous presence of media with a full recognition of all of their tricks. So here's a link there. If you want to get a copy, I have a few signed paperbacks. I have stacks of these things, and I'm going to be doing a promotional, could say book tour in a sense, as soon as I'm able to. And I think once this court case is settled. I'll be able to move forward with that, hopefully sooner. All right, well, this has been great. I think we'll be continuing this conversation tomorrow. We have a good number of people. Again, I think we might have a record. One more time, let's take a look here. We got 60 on Twitter, 5 on DLive, 100 on the main Infinite Plane Society channel, and we have half a dozen on Facebook, Twitch, 20 on Odyssey, 15 on Rumble, and then we have, I don't know, 30 or 40 on the various audio streams: Paranormal Radio, Radio Net, Radio King, and TuneIn. But we're easily at the 200 mark. But no, we have 2 hours of open phones a night. 2 hours of open phones. We crossed that line. We're actually about 20 minutes over. So if you want to get in on the calls, I recommend getting on the newsletter, ips.monster, and you can actually call in and get on caller queue, like right when we start. So I'll put a link below. Looks like I'm missing a lot of action in the chat, but I'll probably catch up with everybody there later. One more time, I want to kind of gloss back over a few things. I know North Korea shooting missiles at Japan. It's like one of the top stories. J6ers try to get a monument up. They screwed up. We talked about synchronicity, symbolism in Godzilla. Kate Middleton's blood was used to paint the King Charles portrait. Michael Flynn said there's going to be a JFK moment for this country, a shot heard round the world if they convict him. So JFK moment. And that's General Flynn, who's basically Q Central. So that's not a minor thing. We talked about news bending and Call of Duty. Call of Duty inspired the fake Uvalde shooting. That's their new story. The shooting was caused by video games. I think they also tried that a bit with Adam Lanza. We talked about the Donald Trump head wound buildup, which is getting even clearer. Every day it's another image of him. This one here looks like a bullet on his head. But this thing with Flynn saying there's going to be a JFK moment, it doesn't get any clearer than that. Like, this is all predictive programming. Okay, well, hopefully I can finish up this book and do a full review. Again, if you don't know the name of the book, it's called In the Country of the Blind, and it's about how the news media and history itself is being directed by a secret society. And here's what I referenced earlier. They talk about something called mimetic drift, and about how the stories alter as they go from person to person. And it says here is, the reason why nobody's going to believe that there's a cabal that controls history is, quote, a lot of people out there today have heard rumors about a secret cabal controlling the course of history. Who? Why, the Jews, or the Masons, or the Vatican, or the Rosicrucians, or the Trilateral Commission. The news has reported synagogues being vandalized by neo-Nazis. Phone calls to the TV stations make it clear that this was being done to strike back at the cabal. So this is exactly how it works. If you were trying to expose the real conspiracy to control history itself, you would be drowned out by all these other conspiracy theorists who blame all these little groups, and they conduct, or they commit acts of arson and violence and vandalism just to sully the intentions, the reputation of anybody questioning these things. And then one other point here, he says, and this is someone from within this secret society, he says, the issue before us is how best to preserve the secret. The fact our enemies were able to penetrate our databases and release them to the world indicates a need for action. We must close the barn door, and second, contain and redirect the flow of unwanted memes among the general public. Meme control. And then weirdly, one of the characters' names, one of the conspirators, has the same last name as the Daily Beast journalist, Kelly Weil, who wrote about flat earthers and other conspiracy theories and really started this idea, the meme, that people became flat earthers because YouTube's algorithm fed them videos. That you watch Alex Jones, and the next recommended video will turn you into a flat earther. And because of this, YouTube screwed up their search functions and made it so that you wouldn't arrive at these videos. Anyway, just another coincidence with that book. Okay, this is Chief Crow. The Edge is in your mind. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. I'll see you all in Gilded, where the research continues 24/7. If you want to join on any of these conversations, just go to ips.monster and click Gilded or Discord. And we're far more active in Gilded, by the way. And it definitely is some of the best cutting edge research. And if you're not there and you just want to follow along with the notes as I report them, there's a link below, minds.com/infinite plane society. What I do there is I screen cap anything of interest that we're going to be talking about tonight, and any comments that you leave me will generally end up here. So there's another place where you can follow along. Okay, yeah, here was the other quote. Libertarian Party member shouts, Donald Trump should have taken a bullet. It's a chorus. Like, I'm getting pre 9/11 vibes here. Like, right before 9/11, every show was about 9/11. Everything on TV was foreshadowing what was about to go down. And the level of foreshadowing here is unprecedented.